You've probably taken it. Your parents definitely gave it to you. And right now, there's a good chance it's sitting somewhere in your house, in your bathroom cabinet, maybe even in your backpack. Tylenol or acetaminophen, the medicine that almost every American grows up with. The safe painkiller, the gentle fever reducer, the thing doctors recommend before almost anything else. But recently, something changed. A new wave of headlines started spreading across the internet. Lawsuits appeared, parents began arguing, and suddenly millions of people were asking the same terrifying question. What if this everyday medicine actually increases the risk of autism? This claim didn't come from a random meme. It didn't start on TikTok. It came from real parents, real lawyers, and real scientists, each telling a very different version of the story. So today we're going to break all of it down carefully, not to scare you, not to push an agenda, but to understand how something we've trusted for decades became one of the most controversial medical debates in America, because the truth is complicated, far more complicated than a yes or no headline. Most people think the Tylenol autism debate is brand new. It's not. The story actually begins years ago, inside hospitals, inside research labs, and inside the homes of parents who started noticing patterns they couldn't explain. It starts with mothers who took Tylenol during pregnancy and later wondered whether that decision connected to the challenges their children faced. It starts with scientific papers suggesting possible associations, and newspapers turning those suggestions into dramatic titles. And it starts with one uncomfortable fact. Acetaminophen is common. Autism diagnoses are rising. And when two lines rise at the same time, humans naturally try to connect them, even when the science says correlation isn't causation. But here's the twist. Some researchers did think we needed to look deeper, not because Tylenol was proven dangerous, but because nobody had ever really questioned it. For decades, acetaminophen was treated like the default, the safe middle ground, especially for pregnant women who couldn't take stronger medications. So when a few early studies hinted at a possible statistical link, the conversation exploded, not because there was proof, but because suddenly something safe didn't feel so simple anymore. Here's where the controversy spikes. Around 2021 to 2022, a group of lawsuits claimed that companies did not sufficiently warn pregnant women about potential risks. This was major, not because lawsuits equal truth, but because lawsuits equal attention. News outlets jumped in, TikTok jumped in, parents jumped in, and suddenly the internet had split into two sides. Side 1, Tylenol causes autism, the science proves it. Side 2, this is misinformation, there's no proof, stop scaring people. The craziest part? Both sides were wrong in different ways, because here's what the actual scientists were saying. We don't have proof. We don't have disproof. We need more data. In other words, it's complicated, which is the last thing the internet wants to hear. Approximately 5 to 6 minutes. To understand why this debate refuses to die, we need to look at where it all began. Inside scientific journals, not YouTube videos, not politicians, not viral Facebook posts, actual research. And this is where things get messy. In the early 2000s, scientists noticed something strange. When they looked at large groups of pregnant women, sometimes thousands, sometimes tens of thousands, they saw that mothers who reported using Tylenol tended to have children who were later diagnosed with autism at slightly higher rates, not massively higher, not guaranteed, just slightly. These studies are called observational studies, meaning researchers watch what happens naturally without controlling every variable. They aren't proof, they're clues, and clues can be misleading. Because here's the catch. The women who took Tylenol weren't randomly chosen. They took it for a reason, usually fever, pain, or inflammation. And all three of those things also affect pregnancy. So the question becomes, was it the Tylenol, or was it the fever, or the illness, or genetics, or something else entirely? That's the problem with observational data. You can't isolate one thing. But these papers still caught the world's attention, because when you see any upward trend, especially involving children, the public reacts emotionally before it reacts scientifically. This is the part of the story that almost nobody explains properly. Why did some scientists think Tylenol could be influencing brain development? It comes down to one molecule, glutathione. Acetaminophen is broken down in the liver using glutathione, which is also important for managing inflammation and oxidative stress. Some researchers proposed a hypothesis, not proof, not fact, that if glutathione levels drop during critical stages of fetal brain development, it might influence how neural pathways form. It's a theory, a scientific maybe, a question mark that needs more data. But when that idea reached the internet, the question mark turned into an exclamation point. A long, complicated biochemical hypothesis became simplified into one sentence. Tylenol damages the baby's brain, which is not what the scientists said. Not even close. This is where everything exploded. A scientific paper might say, there is a potential association that requires further study. But a news article will say, common painkiller linked to autism. Why? Because fear sells. Fear gets clicks. Fear spreads. Then influencers jumped in, mommy bloggers, TikTok doctors, Twitter threads, Instagram infographics. Suddenly, the theory had evolved from a scientific question into a public accusation. And once people are scared of something, it becomes almost impossible to unscare them. While all this was happening, the headlines, the lawsuits, the viral posts, more. Researchers kept running studies, bigger studies, better designed studies, and many of them found something surprising. When you adjust for things like your maternal fever, genetics, infections, environmental factors, age of the mother, lifestyle, the risk barely changed. In some datasets, it disappeared entirely. One group of scientists even said, the evidence is inconsistent. We cannot confirm a causal relationship. But that part, nobody shared, nobody tweeted, nobody made viral TikToks about that. Because no clear evidence isn't exciting. It doesn't shock people, it doesn't scare them. So if the research isn't certain, if some studies show a weak link and others show no link at all, why is the debate still alive? The answer is simple, because parents don't think in statistics, they think in stories. If a mother took Tylenol during pregnancy and her child was diagnosed with autism later, she will naturally search for reasons. Humans always want explanations, especially when something unexpected happens. Even if the science says we don't know, emotion says there must be something. And that emotional storytelling, powerful, raw, human storytelling, is why this topic is still everywhere today. At this point, the debate has pulled in scientists, lawyers, parents, journalists, TikTok, creators, and basically half the internet. So the obvious question becomes, what do the actual medical authorities say? And this is the part almost nobody talks about. Despite what headlines suggest, every major medical organization, and I mean every single one, has given almost the same statement. The American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Acetaminophen remains one of the safest options we have during pregnancy. Evidence does not prove a causal relationship. The FDA, current studies are inconclusive and do not demonstrate causation. The CDC, no proven link. More research is needed. Leading autism researchers, the data is not strong or consistent enough to draw conclusions. Not one of these organizations said Tylenol causes autism, but none of them said there is absolutely zero chance of any effect, because science doesn't speak in absolutes. So they use the language of honest research, may, might, inconclusive, requires more study, and that's where the problem lies. In a world craving simple answers, uncertainty feels like fear. Another reason this topic exploded is because autism diagnoses have gone up dramatically over the last few decades. To many people, that feels like a sign that something must be causing it. But here's what the science actually shows. Autism didn't suddenly appear. Autism diagnoses increased because diagnostic criteria were expanded, awareness improved, teachers were trained to recognize symptoms, doctors stopped mislabeling autism as something else, parents became more proactive, social stigma decreased, early intervention became more common. Today, kids who would have been labeled shy, quirky, or difficult in the 1980s are correctly recognized as neurodivergent, so rising numbers don't automatically mean rising cases. They often mean rising recognition. But when you combine rising autism diagnoses with a medicine that almost everyone takes, fear connects dots that science hasn't. Now let's talk about the lawsuits, because this is where the drama really blew up. Between 2022 and 2024, hundreds of lawsuits were filed in the US claiming Tylenol. Manufacturers didn't properly warn pregnant women, but here's the twist. Most of these lawsuits were dismissed. A federal judge ruled that the scientific evidence wasn't strong enough. Warning labels couldn't be changed based on uncertain data. The causal link wasn't established. This didn't stop fear, but it stopped the legal wildfire. Even then, the lawsuits left a lasting impression because in the internet age, the accusation spreads louder than the verdict. This is where things get emotional. Parents want certainty, mothers want reassurance, people want clear answers. But the truth, the honest truth, is this. There is no study proving that Tylenol causes autism. There is no study proving that it doesn't. Right now, we live in the space between those two statements, the uncomfortable gray zone where science is still working. And that's okay. Science doesn't sprint, it walks, slowly, deliberately, carefully. The point isn't to scare millions of mothers. The point isn't to declare Tylenol dangerous or safe. The point is to ask hard questions responsibly, the way real science does. At the heart of this whole debate aren't lawyers or politicians or influencers, it's parents. Parents desperately trying to understand their children. Parents looking for answers that sometimes don't exist. Parents dealing with fear, guilt, confusion, and love, all at the same time. It's also scientists trying to uncover the truth, not because they want controversy, but because they want clarity. And it's society trying to navigate the difference between evidence, emotion, and uncertainty. When a topic involves children, fear multiplies. And when fear multiplies, misinformation spreads faster than facts. That's why this conversation matters, not to take sides, but to slow down, breathe, and look at reality, not viral headlines. So does it really do anything, or is it just coincidence with other factors?